2017 is now gone and past, and time's arrow marches forward to 2018. And while a slew of massive games are on the way, 2017 had the release of dozens of fantastic games. This was truly a good year in video games, and a pretty bad year for pretty much everything else. Multiple natural disasters in a very short time span, increasingly bad political climate, some very tragic celebrity deaths, and some more unfortunate allegations made to other celebrities, bad dreary music, the net neutrality repeal. Even video games got it pretty bad because of companies like EA and Warner Bros. Pushing predatory microtransactions in games that shouldn't have had them at all. Okay, maybe 2017 sucked overall, but there was still an amassment of incredible games released that year, and today I'm going to mark down my top 5 favorite games of the year. Everything on this list are only the games that I played, because there was so much good stuff there's no way I had enough money, let alone the time to play them all. I'll play you someday, Nier Automata. Wait for me! So, let's end the gab and get to it. This is my top 5 games of 2017. Number 5. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade is quite the interesting beast. Initially pitched in 2014 by a handful of people at Ninja Theory, they wanted to make a game that looked AAA but for the price of an indie game. But the game was also going to tackle a subject matter not handled often or even very well: psychosis. Our story centers on Senua, a Viking woman who's on a quest to get into the Nordic underworld, Helheim, in order to rescue her beloved Dillion. But as you can imagine, breaking into hell isn't an easy task, and Senua's psychosis makes an already dangerous journey even more so. While it kind of feels like a walking sim with a basic combat system added to mix it up a bit, there's just so much interesting stuff backing it up. Visually, it looks incredible, like on par with some of the best looking games to come out in 2017, and some of the imagery is incredibly disturbing yet awe-striking. Senua's journey to the underworld involves her trekking through destroyed villages, ruined fortresses, and the darkest of caverns, and it's hard to tell if some of the things you're seeing are even real, or if it's Senua's broken mind playing tricks on her. And the lines cross so much, they basically become one and the same. The voice work and acting are incredible, and you wouldn't expect it to be. Senua's actress, Melina Juergens, is actually the video director of Ninja Theory, and she does a great job visually portraying Senua's pain, both physical and mental. And the thing that really sells Senua's mental anguish is the voices in her head. Voices that are constantly talking to her from all directions, belittling and berating her. The sound design alone is worth praising. The gameplay itself, while pretty simple, is also good, needing to solve puzzles that require you to change your perspective of the environment, and the combat, while basic, is still pretty intense, fighting tooth and nail against hellish creatures, and the voices in your head warning you about incoming attacks, or maybe they're lying about them. And even also sports a great business model of feeling like a AAA game, but for more of a manageable price. And Hellblade has already proven the model can work, selling 500,000 copies in its first 3 months. Ninja Theory thought they wouldn't reach that milestone until 9 months. In the end, I say Hellblade is worth a look if you think you can handle some of this oppressing imagery and story. And I'm not joking, I highly recommend you play this while in a sound state of mind, because it can get really, really heavy. In the end, Senua's Sacrifice is one hell of an interesting game. That's hell with only one L. Nordic wordplay!
Seat of his soul. Soon must carry his vessel to bring him back home.
Number 4. Pyre. I've never personally been able to get into the other games made by the critically acclaimed studio Supergiant. Bastion was kinda cool, but I got tired of the gameplay and narrator, and Transistor I just really never put the time into. However, their newest game, Pyre, got me fired up. We play as a woman from the unseen kingdom of Sar, and she's banished to the magical wasteland called the Downside for committing the most evil of crimes. She learns how to read.
And you must think I'm a monster.
Yes, indeed, I do think that.
And she comes across some colorful characters traveling in a wagon who have also been banished. Edwin, a human, Jordiel, a demon, and Ruki, a cur, or a dog-like creature. You join up with them and you begin exploring the many different parts of the Downside, running into other exiles with varying backgrounds, but all after the same thing, a way out. And in the Downside, there's only one way to escape and be absolved of all your sins, by competing in a contest known as the Rites, where 2 teams of 3 have to fight in order to douse out the opponent's pyre. The gameplay is best described as 3-on-3 basketball, where you need to pass the orb amongst your team and get it to the opponent's pyre by throwing it in or having your character diving into the flames head-on. Though it sounds simple, in motion it has leagues of depth. Across almost 24 playable characters, across 9 different classes, each one with their own different stats and skill trees, and with 46 equipable talismans to further enhance the abilities of the exiles, and 12 constellations that add even more modifiers to the rights, there's just so much experimenting you can do with the different synergies and modifiers, and in the end you can make the game as difficult or as easy as you want. The main campaign is a sort of road trip, traveling from place to place, taking on a wide variety of colorful characters who want to leave the downside as much as you do. And if you lose a match, there's no game over, the story just carries on, and your failure just gives someone else a chance of getting out. The game is also full of interesting lore, and even a book inside the wagon that you can spend hours reading, learning about the different races, the mythology, and the creation of the rites. And talking with your teammates as you carry on your way develops them nicely, and makes them all stand out. But you can also just talk to them the bare minimum and get into the gameplay, or skip the campaign entirely, because everything is unlocked from the get-go in the free play mode. You can get as involved or as disconnected as you want, and it works either way, although the campaign mode has some rewarding endings that will reward you based on how well you play and how far you think ahead. Visually, it looks incredible too. The bright colors and the fantastic detail in this strange artistic world. Seriously, if I could, I would print out a huge picture that was just the Fall of Solium arena and put that on my wall. It looks that beautiful. The major thing Pyre could use to be even better is online multiplayer, but for now there is local, so grab a friend and light him up, then douse him out.
Together on their own, the journey shall be made. The journey shall be made.
Number 3. Telltale's The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. The third season of the hit Walking Dead point-and-click games by the company Telltale, and one of my personal favorite game series. I'm going to try and avoid spoiling moments and characters from the first 2 seasons, but they do play a big part in this story despite the different characters you play. We take control of Javier Garcia, a Dishonored professional baseball player who, after the zombie apocalypse hits, has to keep a watch over his missing brother's 2 kids, Gabe and Mari, and their stepmom, Kate. After years of being on the run from the undead horde, they finally meet up with some people at a large settlement, and we get to know how people have been surviving for the last 4 or 5 years since the walkers showed up. Now, before I explain why this game gets a spot on the best list, let me clarify that even though I still love the Telltale games, the novelty is starting to run very thin. The moral choice options feel like they're bottlenecking you in certain situations no matter what you say or how many times you try and redo it. And while I know some events are inevitable, some just feel like no matter how much you try to stop something from happening, the game forces you to make certain decisions, so it turns out to be your fault. And the short dialogue summaries do make it hard to figure out what your tone is going to be, and that can lead to some problems. Like this scene where Javi's brother gets hurt, and none of the options looked like they would be a very comforting choice, and then the one I did pick that I thought might be the best option made the tempers fly even harder. And while I do like QuickTime events, the ones here don't really have any risk because even if you hit the wrong buttons or mess up, there's nothing really at risk, and you just end up becoming best shot in the game! These issues and more, accompanied by the, while still pretty looking engine and graphics, are pretty outdated and need to be upgraded or replaced. Alright, I just wanted to vent out those issues because they are undeniably a problem. That all being said, I still love this game just like its predecessors. Javi and his connection with what remains of his family is very believable, and the 2 socially deprived teens add to the feeling of loneliness despite you being all together. And you can really get invested with the conversations with the new characters you meet along the way, like the gentle giant Trip and the amazing badass that is Paul Jesus Monroe. Look at this guy as he kung fu zombies to death. God, this guy is awesome! But these characters are part of what demonstrates how the survivors are adapting to the zombie threat, and have built near self-sustaining settlements to protect and cope with the encroaching horde. The Walking Dead games have never felt so homely before, even in the best of times compared to this. But as always, the humans are probably more dangerous than the zombies, as a group known as the New Frontier have been running around and causing problems and will likely be a key faction in the story. and we even have the return of a character from the other games, who again, I won't spoil, but I will say it's great to see this person come back, but it's hard to be fair and not have your decisions altered by your love for them, and you need to separate their biases because they will oftentimes be in the wrong. Sorry for the vague talk, but I can't say too much without giving stuff away. The ending seemed a bit rushed, and there are a handful of other annoyances, but in the end, I still really loved A New Frontier. The characters, their relationships, the tough decisions and the surprising turns, and the evolution of a Muertos-infested world. With the 4th and final season on the horizon, Telltale's Walking Dead isn't dead yet.
I did whatever I had to do to protect them.
Sometimes it's not enough.
Number 2. Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. Another game in another one of my favorite game series, and again, I'll try to avoid spoilers from the other 2 games, but it's not as easy this time around, so minor spoilers for the first 2 Dishonored games ahead. This is an expandalone that carries off from the ending of Dishonored 2, and this time around we play as Billy Lurk, an assassin who served under and was trained by the Knife of Dunwall himself, Dowd, the killer of the Empress Jessamine Caldwin. After Billy finally tracks down and frees Dowd from the clutches of a void-worshipping cult called the Eyeless, Dowd reveals he has one last assassination job for us to take before he calls it quits. The target? The Outsider, the arcane deity responsible for all the magical anomalies and for giving all the playable characters supernatural powers, and Billy is no exception. If you're like me and just love Dishonored from its artistic design, its interesting lore, and its deep and stellar stealth gameplay, then half my explanation is pretty much summed up already, but I'll go into it a bit more. The steampunk streets of Karnaca are full of detail, and its architecture, and scaling the rooftops and nicking the unsuspecting public's gold and valuables, is still as fun as intense as ever. But there are a bunch of key differences that give Billy probably the most unique playstyle yet. Along with new tools like the hook mine and the hag ball, Billy also has 3 original powers. Displace, which is like Blink, but also allows you to place a marker that you can teleport to at a different time as long as you're within its range. Semblance, which allows you to steal someone's face so you can infiltrate enemy heavy areas quickly. And Foresight, which you can use to mark targets and plan routes without having to leave the comfort of your hiding spot. These abilities are really cool and aren't exactly like the powers from the other characters. They run on a different kind of energy that's constantly refilling. And Billy's other abilities, like talking with rats and a powerful long-range magic sword slash, are pretty cool. There are also some things removed this time around. There's no chaos level, so going on killing sprees doesn't affect the story. And there's no magic runes to collect, so you can just focus on the short but very intricate missions. Some say that those are staples of the Dishonored formula, so it feels lacking taking them out. But how I look at it, even as much as I love the Dishonored recipe, sometimes we do need to add a new flavor to tingle the taste buds a bit, and Death of the Outsider does this great, changing the importance from enhancing your magic powers to doing shady jobs on the street in order to buy more gear, which is a nice change of pace and fits the story and character. The brief cutscenes with Dowd and Billy are also interesting, as they detail just how much has changed since they last met, and what they actually mean to one another. And we also get the closest dive into what the Outsider actually is, and what being a god actually means to him, adding more depth to an already fascinating character. Death of the Outsider is a great expandalone that gives Dishonored fans more of what they love, while also mixing it up a bit for something new. And no matter what ending you get, I feel like they're both satisfying and tragic in different ways. If you like Dishonored, this is another great addition to the series, and hopefully, it's not the last.
You know I'm coming for you.
Before we get to number 1, here are a few honorable mentions of games that were also great, but for some reason or another, didn't quite make it to the top 5. For Honor. One of the more underappreciated games of the year, I feel, but it's not hard to see why. The story isn't that great, and despite the huge buildup before its launch, it lost a lot of fan base quickly due to server issues, microtransactions, an overpriced season pass, and a few other issues. But despite all that, it still has a great design, customization, and gameplay that feels more like a fighting game. Here's hoping this can pull a Rainbow Six Siege and come back from a rocky first year. Cuphead. A beautiful game that looks and feels like a cartoon from the 1930s, that's also as tough as the time period, providing a solid but fair challenge while just looking classy as hell. However, this game did kinda pull some elitist jerks out of the woodwork, so I want to say this. If you like Cuphead because it's hard, then great, I can totally agree. But don't be a dickhead about it and belittle others just because they're not as skilled or don't have as much time as you do. Neo. Speaking of hard games, I'm a big fan of the Soulsborne series, and while many clones have come out to try and ape the franchise, Neo not only did it right, but may have done it even better. With fluid gameplay, cool culture, and a load of systems to keep the gameplay varied and unique, the only reason this didn't take a place in the top 5 is because I only got halfway through it, and I didn't feel satisfied putting it on the list without having finished it. Sorry Neo, it's not you, it's me. Fortnite. I bought into the early access for this game, and I think it was money well spent. The base building to fight off hordes of zombies is a lot of fun on its own, and the addition of Battle Royale mode adds even more to do, so I always had myself coming back to Fortnite across the year to play it for a few more hours and see what was new and improved, and enjoyed every minute of it. But to be fair, I'm not giving an early access game a place on the list, so sorry Fortnite, it's not me, it's you. Super Mario Odyssey. I only played this for maybe a collective hour at a friend's place on another friend's Nintendo Switch, but that hour felt like a constant flow of dopamine going into my brain, bringing out my nostalgic love of Mario, my often neglected love of platformers, and my current love of new game design. And Mario Odyssey was a joy to play for that brief time, and I was really tempted to put it somewhere on the top 5 solely on that hour. Hopefully I can get my own Switch and my own copy of this and jump into the full experience soon. And my number 1 of 2017 is... The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. And... Horizon Zero Dawn. I know, this seems like a cop-out. Why would you give 2 games the number 1 spot? Well, reason 1. It's my list, I'll do whatever I want! Second, when I really thought about it, if I put these games on 2 different spots on the list, no matter what order, I would end up repeating a lot of the reasons I like both games. And in the end, one would get a little watered down explanation, and it would just leave less room on the list for other games to stand out. And third and finally, as pretentious as this was gonna sound, I truly believe these games are on par with each other. I'll rattle off the basic stories of both and go into more detail. Breath of the Wild sees the hero of Hyrule, Link, waking up from 100 years of stasis to find that a creature known as Calamity Ganon has defeated Link's allies and is just one step away from total domination. But Princess Zelda has been fending him off this whole time, and Link is finally ready to gear up, reclaim the ancient technology that is now under Ganon's control, and finish off the beast once and for all. Now in Horizon Zero Dawn, the story centers around a young redhead named Aloy, who's an outcast to her people, the Nora. While adventuring one day, she stumbles across what remains of a scientific lab, where she claims a device that allows her to see the many secrets of the world and the weaknesses of the robot animals that roam the continent. When she grows up, she begins her search to find out who she really is and what secrets are hidden in the fallen futuristic society that has been taken back by nature. Both these games are open worlds that are taking risks in different ways. Breath of the Wild is an entirely new type of Zelda game, the first open world sandbox in the series, and it changes the formula from around 8 or more big dungeons with new items in each to advance the story, to only 4 not even that big main dungeons, and all the items you need are given to you in the first hour. Equipable armor and different types of weaponry like axes, spears, and clubs. A great deal of elements from survival games like being affected by weather and how you can use the environment to your advantage in cool, creative ways. The exploration and how you can climb practically anything as long as you've got the stamina for it. A combat system that feels like Bloodborne and is just as tough but feels damn good when you take out a large horde of enemies. And the other pointless additions that are still cool, and naming them could take up the whole video. How Link reacts to being in certain climates, how people react to Link based on what he's doing or wearing, how during a storm you could become a lightning rod because of the metal you wear, and how the rain makes it impossible to climb. Okay, it's not all good, seriously, screw the rain. And then we have Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a brand new IP made by the team that made Killzone. The world of Horizon looks jaw-dropping because of the bright and varied foliage, and the slick yet aggressive design of the robots roaming the plains. It's a world that's full of the remnants of a forgotten scientific past, and the cultures that form around these remains either grow to fear it or grow to worship it. And the farther you get and the more you see of the main story, the more pieces start to fit together, and what really happened, and I don't want to give anything away, but it's fascinating to learn what really happened to the world, and what events took place to leave it in such a state. Aloy is a great character who, while snarky, just wants to help people and be accepted because she was rejected by her own people. Her, along with the other great deal of characters, are well voiced and well acted, and just feel genuine and real. The combat is also tense in a different way from Breath of the Wild. It's more tactical, where you need to think about placing traps before a fight breaks out, and trying to be more accurate with your shots to either rip a weapon off a robot or deal massive damage to it. Both these games have a ton of differences, but also a ton the same, and they're both sandboxes with the usual sandbox trappings, like collectibles, towers, and crafting, but they do these things in such unique and fun ways. From scaling a large robot giraffe by figuring out how to use the environment to get on top of him, cute little tree creatures that usually have fun little challenges behind collecting them, crafting bombs and arrows on the fly where you're being charged by an incoming metallic monstrosity, and great ways of getting around like controlling your enemies and riding them, or snowboarding down on your shield. Both these games just do so much to separate themselves from other open world games, and the stuff we see all the time feels so fresh in both of these. And they both came out so close to each other, it still feels fresh even if you play them back to back. Great sandboxes, interesting characters and stories, engaging gameplay loops. There's so much more to say, but those are videos for other days. The bottom line, Breath of the Horizon Zero Wild Dawn is my #1 of 2017. Thank you for watching, and here's looking forward to a great new year.